San Pedro does heal and cleanse the body. It can vibrate the body. This is where kinetic energy that is trapped in the autonomic nervous system is actually starting to be shaken and vibrated out of the body. You and I have been in some ceremonies where some people are really shaking and moving, and it can actually feel incredible because your body's clearing this energy. If you read Peter Levine's work and somatic experiencing and how you hit a deer at night when you're driving, or a kangaroo, and they shake after they've been hit, or a dog, humans, this is how we mammals are resetting the nervous system. And so if you've had an accident from when you're 10 years old, you crashed on your bike, you might actually access that point in time somatically, holotropic returning to wholeness, and actually shake and move some trapped trauma from 30 years ago when you crashed your bike.
Greetings and welcome to the Dr. Espen podcast. I'm Espen. Today I'm joined by one of my closest friends, one of my mentors, and an incredible leader in the plant medicine world. This is going to be a very exciting conversation. If you've ever been wondering, is plant ceremony for me? Psychedelic medicine is a ceremony something that I want to explore? Is this something that could help me, benefit me? We are going to aim to answer all of those questions and more in this conversation, specifically about the sacred sacrament known as Wachuma or San Pedro. So before we get into it, I want to introduce Bei Tretiakov, as I mentioned, one of my absolute brothers, and I've had an opportunity to sit in ceremony with him many times. So today we'll be speaking from experience, but we'll also be sharing a lot of the science, a lot of the application behind these sacred sacraments or plant sacraments with you, so you can, one, be safe, two, understand and learn, or understand and learn a bit more about it, and also three, potentially also, if right for you, embark upon such a powerful healing path, if this is something that's been in your field. Bei Tretiakov is a full-time working member of the psychedelic plant medicine community here in Australia, originally from Takaka in New Zealand. Bei first planted his first San Pedro in 1997. He's been teaching how to grow and prepare sacred plants in the medicine world for mind, body, and spirit healing for many, many years. He's also an international teacher and creator of Attunement Therapy. So if you have not yet heard my previous interview with Bei talking about Attunement Therapy, go and check that out. It's a very, very powerful healing methodology. Now, Bei and his wife travels all over the world and run a range of different San Pedro ceremonies around the world. They're currently in Asia, which we'll talk a little bit about. And Bei's current mission is to share the tools and the knowledge to give you and the people around the world access to this abundant resource for healing and well-being in the community. I just want to say, Bei, having had the opportunity to get to know you over the years, it's a privilege that you've taken the time out from China to join in today. And for those of you who don't know, Bei is also an initiated roadman for the Native American Church. So he speaks from a lot of experience when it comes to the sacred sacraments or plant medicines. And in this conversation, we're going to lean deep into learning about the power of San Pedro. Bei, welcome, brother. How are you, mate?
Good. Yeah, just loving it here in China. A lot of people say, why do you go to China? And so it's fantastic. It's the best food in the world, actually, in a minority area here where there's just amazing fresh produce, tall mountains, clean air, just loving it. So here working on my first book, and I get too distracted around Byron Bay with surfing and mowing the lawn. So yeah, it's good to be here. Yeah.
Mate, for those who don't know, tell us, what is San Pedro?
San Pedro is a beautiful cactus that comes from the Andes that actually different varieties grow all up and down the Andes in South America. However, gardeners and botanists have been moving it around the planet for, about 100 years, which means that it's established all over the planet. There's a lot in South Africa, United States, Central Mexico, Central America, New Zealand, Australia, warmer parts of Europe. It doesn't like to freeze solid, but anywhere it doesn't really freeze solid, it grows. But what's interesting about it is I've bought it in Bunnings, I've bought it in Mitre 10. This is a master plant, a powerful plant teacher healer, and it's actually it's all over the place. And a lot of people like to collect it and grow it, which means that there's a huge quantity as a community resource potentially if we kind of create a different kind of awareness around it. and remove some of the stigmas and taboos that are still culturally there. But it's a beautiful cactus. A lot of people love growing it. It has beautiful flowers and has a really beautiful energy around the home. People grow it indoors. People grow it in their bedrooms or all over the place. And there's a huge network of people all over the world linked together, especially on Facebook, trading pieces of cactus and helping each other grow it, and also breeding new varieties. Yeah, but it has a long, long history, millennial history of being a healer and a teacher in the Andes in South America.
So it's a teacher healer plant. It's a cactus. You cook and prepare it in a certain ceremonial way. Then you can either eat it or drink it. And it, of course, has these psychedelic, very powerful healing effects. And so we'll get into that in a moment. I remember when I started my medicine journey in Peru many, many years ago now, I first went through a deep cleanse, 30-day deep cleanse, fasting, etc., praying, cleansing myself. Then I went to a San Pedro ceremony, and we went there day one. We were cooking it and preparing it and praying for it and so on and so forth. Went back day two after they had prepared the medicine. The way they prepared it was just beautiful. And then I had San Pedro for the first time. And I remember I was sitting there and I was looking at the trees, and the trees were, and I can tell you, talking to me. I'm looking at the animals, and I could feel what they were feeling, and they could feel what I was feeling, and they were talking with me. And I had this incredible heart-opening effect where I realized how I was connected with everything, to everything, through love. And it just absolutely reset my nervous system. And of course, as we've spoken about, Bei, you and I have had the privilege of sitting in many ceremonies together and cried together and laughed together and sing together and pray together. So I want to kind of ask, overall, San Pedro, how does it work? What is its psychedelic effects? And of course, also, after you've talked a little bit more about San Pedro specifically, I want to get into safety, because this is not something that you go and just do. This has to be done in a specific, a reverent, sacred, and respectful way. So tell us a little bit more about San Pedro and its psychedelic effects.
Yeah, thanks, bro. Even just hearing what you're saying there, someone could be like, "Oh, you take it, and trees are going to talk to me." Whoa, that sounds maybe a bit intense. There's actually a whole spectrum of experiences of the way you could work with San Pedro. For example, microdosing. If you go kind of below what you can actually feel, this could be a very small amount, maybe 2 or 3 mils of liquid. You might just go about your day differently. You might take more time for yourself. You might feel a bit more compassion, empathy. You might feel happier. You might have a bit more energy. But you also might notice things that are off in what you're saying, what you're thinking, or you might tidy your house in a bit of a different way. And so you actually notice where there's distortions of energy that are kind of not life-affirming, oh, my house is filthy, or I've left a mop at the front door, that's a bit gross, I'll go move that. And so there's a spectrum here. And so someone as well could go hiking and have a little bit more and have a good anti-inflammatory effect, or maybe they've usually got sore knees and their knees feel better, and they've got all this energy and they just feel so beautifully connected with the earth and the sun or the rain or the wind. That's another way of having it. Another thing I want to mention is a lot of people don't have a relationship with ceremonial discipline or respecting plants or respecting themselves or anything like that, and they might still see this as like a drug to go have fun. San Pedro has a very dynamic personality. So if some people have San Pedro and go to a festival, go dancing, and San Pedro is like, okay, you're at a festival dancing. Okay, we're going to make the most of this. But it also might point out, hey, just so you know, this maybe isn't the best environment, and maybe you want to try consuming meat in a different place, maybe with different types of music, somewhere quieter. Or a lot of people might be in a festival, they end up sitting in a tree in the forest and talking to the tree like you were, not going to the, psytrance stage or something. And so it's got this extremely dynamic personality. I just read a report from someone, a restaurant waiter in the United States, and he was like, I think it was the second time he had it. It's like, oh, I'm just going to have it and go to work. Yeah, I'll just go to work. And he's at work and he's realizing how sociopathic he is in service to self with the way he has conversations with anyone at work and drawing attention to himself. And he's like, oh my God, that's really out of alignment. And so his compassion and empathy for other staff and their customers completely went up. And then he started to look at some of the toxicity in culture and society and what's going on with high-end dining and everything like that. And it was like, wow, looking at all the programming, having the scope and scale of it, and he could still do his job. Again, it's very dynamic. But then if you take it in an intentional ceremonial setting, especially if there's a group of people who already see it in this viewpoint and have this reverence for it, that's when things can get really powerful, and all kinds of healings can take place for the physical body or for the mind. San Pedro cleans the mind. So if you've got toxic imagery, if you watch too many dodgy movies when you're a teenager, some people actually feel their mind cleaning all the stuff out. We've had guys who've done, a few years in the military, and they feel their mind cleaning from some of the indoctrinational experiences they've had in the military as well. San Pedro can be a purgative, which means some people actually will throw up during a ceremony more when it's in an intentional setting. And this is often mucus. So it's mucus from the gut. It's what you throw up doesn't look like what you drink. Yeah. And so it actually clears mucus in your eyes and your ears and your nose. And so it increases all this clarity. So people have better taste, better eyesight. Some people don't need their reading glasses for a week after consuming even just a microdose of San Pedro. So having it in a ceremonial setting is really beautiful. But in a culture that is, very atheist and secular, a lot of us, our access to ceremonial discipline was lost. And so a big part of running plant ceremonies, and all the people running plant ceremonies, especially Native American people, is bringing back, helping people understand a sense of respect and reverence to, a spiritual setting, and working with these ancient plant teachers in a healthy way. And if you don't respect them, they'll teach you to respect them. So if someone comes into a ceremony, or, I hear about some people having a big dose by themselves and going somewhere, and the plant teaches them respect. And so that's why we call it a plant teacher. All of these avenues that say I could teach or another facilitator could teach, the plant could teach an individual that as well. But the role of facilitators is sometimes to fast track and create greater levels of health and safety. But because you yourself and me have had these experiences with the plant, we can transmit that surety and that knowing to people, so people can feel more, say, comfortable next to you in a ceremony, for example, because you've been there before, and you're there again. You've shown up again. You're like, this is good, And so when people have that surety and knowing in them, that can help someone who's maybe scared, or someone who's got some difficult stuff in their life they need to look at, So that's what I call the total holding environment. It's actually who's at a ceremony and who's there taking care, and also where the ceremony is, and if there's a fire and what's happening in the ceremony, the types of music. But the total holding environment is also someone's home life and their integration time over the next weeks and months. So San Pedro is very aware of everything about you, what you need, and where you're living and what you're doing, and will help people in a way that's completely appropriate to where they're at. And so some other plant medicines, or maybe something like LSD, can give people an experience that's too much for where they're at. San Pedro is really cool, and that's why people call it the grandfather. He's like, I'm going to give you a little lesson. I'm going to help you out a bit, but I'm going to go easy on you, And if you're ever feeling like, let's go deep, people are like, okay, yeah, we can do that too. But he gives people exactly what they need. And so this intelligent, dynamic attribute of this medicine makes my job really easy, because I can really trust the way it works with each individual, and that it's going to unfold what it needs to for each person. And that's why there's such a huge scope of what can happen for different people in a ceremonial event. Everyone's going to have a different experience. If you speak Portuguese, the San Pedro is going to speak to you in Portuguese and explain things in the way you understand things. If you believe in Allah or Jesus, it's going to speak to you from your religious viewpoint. If you're a scientific materialist, it's going to talk to you from that viewpoint. So this is the really cool thing about it, is it speaks each individual's language. Yeah.
That makes sense. And from my experience, also similar. I've realized that the amount of heart opening and healing experiences that were available for me when I understood the power of these sacraments. And so I just want to speak to the whole safety side of things for a moment, because Bei mentioned two different things. One, the aspect of, having an experience or a drug or something, and two, the reverent side and the respectful side of plant ceremonies. So just to be clear, we're not advocating to just go out and, drink San Pedro or do ayahuasca or something of that nature without having the appropriate understanding, community, safety network, etc. Like I mentioned, I started my journey over in Peru, and honestly, what I've realized is some of the best medicine carriers, ceremony holders or facilitators in the world, lucky enough, blessed enough I am, are actually, according to me, in countries around the world, and certainly also here in Australia. It doesn't only happen in North or South America. So what tips and advice do you have for the people out there thinking, I've heard about these medicines, these sacred sacraments, these plant ceremonies, etc. I'm interested. Where do I go? What do I do? How does one ensure that it's right for them? And obviously, just as important, that they're in the right community where it's done safely and ethically.
In countries where it's legal, there can be a bit more of a network of safety. In countries where it's not approved, then you've got a situation where there's kind of accountability between all the different practitioners. And what's really cool about places like Australia is all the practitioners are friends, and we can kind of like bounce ideas off people. And also sometimes a traveling teacher will come from another country and we can all join together and be in a ceremony together and sing each other's songs and things like that. And that's really beautiful. If someone wants to get interested in this work, what's really cool at the moment, because going through a psychedelic renaissance, is that on Netflix, on the internet, there's so much good material to actually get really informed about what these plants are and what they do.
Awesome. So what would you recommend? Where do we go? What do we watch?
Well, the third wave is really cool, which is it's a support page in the United States, and it helps a lot of people microdosing at home as for coming from this kind of viewpoint of like civil disobedience. But they also have really good information on all different types of psychedelics and how you can access those. So they especially linked and affiliated with groups in Costa Rica, where you can actually just book and go and do this legally. And it's, everyone in Costa Rica, a lot of these larger retreats are everyone's very experienced and everything's done really well. That's a good way if you were in the United States or something like that, and you can just do it all legally and book it all in. Otherwise, it's very much word of mouth in places like Australia, New Zealand, a lot of the United States, Canada, and things like that, in the UK. And so it's what I find is this sort of thing might find you. Some people think, I want to try San Pedro. Then someone mentions it at work the next day, And so what I always encourage people to do is talk about it. Go home and talk about it. Talk to your mum about it. Talk to your family about it, your friends about it at work. And we've had people come back, and they come back with their dad and their son. We've got 3 generations and something like that. I had a woman, she came, she was probably in her 60s, and she came to an event, and she called her son. He was 25, and he said, I don't know about that, Mum. That sounds really, he was telling her that it didn't sound safe, And so there's it's really interesting, these different kind of viewpoints. And she's like, no, I need to go work on myself. I'm going to do this. But there's definitely all kinds of viewpoints. And we've actually got, we're linked up with a few different doctors who people actually, if they're concerned about whether it's right for them. We had someone who had had a stroke. They go to the doctor and go, hey, is San Pedro right for me? The main contraindications, a contraindication means it's like if something with these 2 drugs, chemicals don't go well together. And in this day and age, with so many different types of pharmaceuticals that are very common, there are some that do not go well with psychedelics in general. Mm-hmm. And there's some types of medications. The main medications where there's a concern with San Pedro, I think, was like antipsychotics. Antidepressants are fine, unless it's an MAO antidepressant, but also some heart medications are not so good. But at the same time, again, it's a very tricky business in this sense with contraindications. It's nothing to be too worried about. We've never had a drama, and I've never heard of anyone actually having a drama. There's no known lethal dose of San Pedro. There's no known lethal dose. It's very, very safe.
So you can't OD on it without experiencing a tremendous amount of love first. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but it's impossible. It's not toxic. It's not toxic. Whereas some other things, there's some other psychedelics. There's a toxic dose. Yeah. And so some people go to their doctor and say, hey, is San Pedro right for me? And they can look at say, a medication they're on and go, yeah, it's good. And so more and more doctors, especially in Australia, are becoming clued on to this kind of thing, because in Australia, doctors attend ceremonies, nurses attend ceremonies, military,
Yeah, I've sat
lawyers,
with many high-level entrepreneurs, many doctors, policemen, firemen, community officers, doctors, researchers. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. We've even had like private security people who've worked overseas on war zones and things like that.
Yeah.
So there's a huge range of this huge scope of society that are really helping themselves with this. And I'd really love to see more people from the government attending these sorts of ceremonies who are actually working on problems, because San Pedro is amazing at creating innovation. That means you can look at a problem from a different angle. So let's say, for an example, a mathematical equation, you're able to look at that from 3 different angles to solve it. And so when engineers come to a ceremony, they're actually able to redesign something they're working on and create innovation, which means they're going to find a cheaper, easier, safer, quicker way of doing it. And so that the brain is able to do that. But say for musicians, they can have creative breakthroughs. All these different breakthroughs can happen. Poets, writers can happen on San Pedro. And even with microdosing, this can happen too. And so it's the level of applicable innovation that can happen no matter what your skill base is. Or if you have a toxic job, someone could be at a toxic job that they kind of know is toxic, and they try San Pedro and it's like, hey, this job's not good for you. You already know that. I think, it could be time. And so, to quit. And we see people again sometimes after an event, and they've sold their house, they've quit their job, they're living closer to nature, they're growing food, and they've got a different job, and they're far happier. And so San Pedro as well can give people this little push, this little boost, this little bit of willpower to go, hey, look, you're going to wait another 10 years? We're going to do it tomorrow. And so there's, this amazing life-changing little kind of kick up the bum, but in a friendly way, is another aspect of this plant.
I love what you talk about in terms of microdosing. So my experience was, as I mentioned many years ago in South America, and sitting with the medicine, sitting in ceremony, I realized how much, as you mentioned before, Bei, of my life was not ceremonial. We go back thousands of years. We look at lineages from around the world. We know the ceremony is always included. What is our ceremony now? A birthday party, Christmas, and all these other things. It's not really ceremony. It's a celebration. So one of the things that sitting with the sacred sacraments has taught me is the lack of ceremony in our lives in general. So to the listeners and viewers, what is your ceremony? How is your life a ceremony? How are you making your life, your relationships, your connection to your creator, a ceremonial process? And I think for most people, who say, I can't remember last time I sat in ceremony. I can't remember last time I sat and prayed. I can't remember last time I sat in song and received wisdom through stories and song. And that's something, Bei, that we've shared many times. We have a circle of, who knows, 30 people, and we get to sit and we get to sing and we get to pray and we get to be vulnerable and we get to experience the effects of the alkaloids. Maybe you can talk about this in the moment, of these sacred sacraments and how they literally have a biophysiologically healing effect on the body. But we also get to be together to create community, to let go of the ego and the critical thinking or thinking mind. We get to tune into our senses. We get to let go of things that we need to let go of, and we get to come together in communion with God. I mean, the first time I sat in ceremony, I cried for the first time properly in 10 years. I had done 10 plus years of deep dive in personal development at that time. And yet it's still not gotten me to that next level. I do the medicine. What happens? Boom, my heart opens and I can feel again, and I can cry again, and I can attune to my senses again. Firstly, tell us about the biophysiological healing effect, scientifically proven healing effect of San Pedro, and then just a little bit more about how to make our lives ceremonial in general, please.
Yeah, well, one of the things San Pedro does is can just point out what's wrong in your body, and so a really common effect is unfortunately in our society we have a very high proportion of women who have some kind of sexual abuse and things like that in their timeline, and this can be also be compartmentalized, and so compartmentalized sexual abuse if you're younger means you don't even remember it. So I talked to an acupuncturist once in a women's acupuncture clinic, and he said every woman that has been abused has digestive issues. That means there's a safety issue that's running all the time. It's a higher baseline.
Can you say that again? Speak up a little bit more. Sorry.
There's a safety issue running all the time, a higher baseline activation of the sympathetic nervous system all the time, which means all the time you're not digesting food properly. And so there's digestive issues, there can be all kinds of blockages around the stomach and the small intestine. Many women in their first ceremony have pain and discomfort in this area and might throw up or have pain and discomfort in this area. It's actually common, and it lasts for one ceremony and then it's done. And this is where there's trapped energy in this area, in this part of the body. And San Pedro is almost like a teacher at school pointing at a whiteboard, but they're pointing at a picture of your body, and they're going to point at where there's blockages and where there's things that need to be looked at. This could be something in your mind, something in your shoulder, something in your gut, something like that. Some people come to a ceremony and they're like, wow, I need to detox. Wow, okay, I need to do this. And so it's pointing these things out. So San Pedro does heal and cleanse the body. It can vibrate the body. This is where kinetic energy that is trapped in the autonomic nervous system is actually starting to be shaken and vibrated out of the body. You and I have been to some ceremonies where some people are really shaking and moving, and it can actually feel incredible because your body's clearing this energy. If you read Peter Levine's work and somatic experiencing and how you hit a deer at night when you're driving, or a kangaroo, and they shake after they've been hit, or a dog. Humans, this is how we mammals are resetting the nervous system. And so if you've had an accident from when you're 10 years old, you crashed on your bike, you might actually access that point in time somatically, holotropic returning to wholeness, and actually shake and move some trapped trauma that's from 30 years ago when you crashed your bike. So there's all these different ways San Pedro works in the body. It's very hard to say, this or that. It's in Andean culture, it's often seen as a cure-all. So if you've got a problem, it's gonna work it out. I've heard stories of people with brain cancer attending ceremonies many times, and then the cancer's just gone. This kind of thing. A lot of these sorts of cancers actually have an emotional source. If you look at Gabor Mate's book on, terminal illness, that one. Yep. And so a lot of the emotional causes of different illnesses and things like that, which also you might go back and look at. But then if you're looking at these group environments and yourself talking about crying after a long time, when we're in these group environments, we also, we're coming back to this idea that we are primal communal beings. We used to actually communal sleeping and being close to each other, especially your bloodlines, especially in winter, people sleeping in smaller spaces to keep warm and a closer community. And so that level of safety is a real big part to feeling the cueing the body to let this emotion out. And so in the South Pacific, with more of the sort of Stoic society and kind of the myth of the man alone and being strong, it means that the body actually doesn't often feel safe to cry, and that's why these group events are really beautiful. Coming back to what you said about ceremony, and people not having ceremony, I feel like there's actually a lot of people in Western secular materialist society, are spiritually hungry, but they don't know they're spiritually hungry because they didn't grow up with any spirituality. A really good example of this is you go to Bali and it feels good. Bali feels good because there's a huge spiritual energy there. People offer these flower blessings to the different Hindu gods every morning. So there's 4 different colors of flowers and incense, and they put water on it. And they actually place it down and orientate it to the directions for the different gods as well. And they're there at first light doing it, and a beautiful incense that's locally made. And you walk past in the morning, you could be going for a jog, and you're like, that's really cool. I like seeing that. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why they're doing it, and I don't know why they're so committed to it. But I like seeing that. So we actually feel an attraction to that, a relationship to the mystery, because you're praying to these gods. It's a mysterious experience, and people love it. But this is also the same thing as building a cathedral. Building a cathedral is like, we're going to build this place, and we're gonna come together and pray to this mystery. So whether you're leaving flowers to the Hindu gods or you're going to build a cathedral, look at some of the Gothic cathedrals, man. Those people were passionate about the mystery and about their God, whatever it is, where you go to, Iran and look at some of the things they've created there for their places of worship. And so this relationship to mystery, I see it as a biological imperative that is not talked about, that is actually a really important part of health. And so with ceremonies, there's also this mysterious element of giving thanks. You're giving thanks to the sun coming up every day, and also this, you talk about prayer. Like even the concept of prayer is also mysterious. How we can actually, a lot more of it's verified with its quantum sciences, but also praying to creation, for the universe to orientate it to what your heart is asking for as well. There's all these beautiful mysteries entwined through these ceremonial processes. What's also really beautiful is a lot of in South America, North America, Central America, all over the world, really, we have these different shamans and teachers who are receiving guidance to travel to places where people have lost touch with their spiritual practices, with their relationship to mystery, and to offer some of their culture and some of their practices back to people who've lost that connection. So we have teachers come over, for example, from the United States, and offer some of their practices for ceremonies freely. And some people will call that culture appropriation, but you've actually someone coming over and going, hey, I want to teach you this, so this can help you out. And so we're really reliant on all these teachers to help support us with how we can develop these ceremonies. Because a lot of us Westerners, we know that we had those connections to the elements, to the mystery, to ceremonial practices, maybe hundreds of years ago, maybe thousands of years ago. It's familiar, but it's very much lost, And so if you look at the Protestant Reformation and the way the church has changed and everything like that in Europe, and the decrease in Gnostic values are kind of earth-based people. Gnostic means to know. And so a lot of these values were stolen, and maybe not stolen, but a lot of people became Christian and these values were lost. And that means down the track, many generations later, there's a lot of people with European bloodlines who do feel quite lost within the subject of spirituality, to the point that they can't even have a conversation about it, because there's a sense of sadness about it. And that's why these ceremonies are so beautiful. Yeah.
Great point. It's not just about the healing, scientifically proven healing capabilities of some of these master plants, but it's also about bringing ceremony and prayer and that overall reverence into our lives again. I think this is critical. So again, a question to ponder is, what is sacred in your life? How are you making it sacred? How are you maintaining ceremony in your life? And that's one of the greatest things that I've learned from these medicines. Before we wrap up, I've got some questions for you. I'd love to learn more about the book that you're currently writing. It's called The Therapy and Philosophy of San Pedro. Tell us about the highlights of this book, when is it coming out, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, bro. I mean, this book's actually like just what we talked about. That's one of the chapters about the relationship to mystery. So all of these elements that can be developed by people, these teachings and lifestyle choices that can happen when they consume San Pedro, or not consume San Pedro and just have it around their house. These are there, but then it's got heaps of case studies as well. There's a whole section on San Pedro for focus. This is where people are taking San Pedro instead of a pharmaceutical stimulant like Adderall or Ritalin or dexamphetamine, something like that, and having the same effect, but it's something they can grow themselves. They don't even have to have it every day. So there's all of that. And so then also the ceremonial aspect of it, and the legal aspect of it, the cultural aspect of it. The philosophy is very interesting, because I've looked at a lot of amazing authors in the realms of Zen Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism, and all through a lot of Chinese stuff as well, because I'm here in China. And so a lot of philosophy and a lot of these ancient philosophies point to a lot of the same sort of messages about life and being alive and why we're here. And I get a lot into things like feng shui as well, and setting up spaces, but also setting up ceremonial spaces, the way we live. It's a beautiful book, but it's it's written with a like a kind of New Zealand sense of humor and things like that. It's not a book about botany. It's a book about the relationship between the human body and consumption, or relationship to these plants. Yeah, and that's definitely my main area of expertise here. And it's a really exciting writing it. I'm just loving it. Yeah.
Oh, mate, how exciting. This is good. Okay, so let's talk about some of the unsaid things often in this realm, as far as I'm concerned. So I've been sitting in over 100 ceremonies now in many parts around the world. You've probably done a lot more than that. And what
I'm not counting.
no counting, right?
I don't have enough
And
fingers.
yeah, exactly. But obviously the San Pedro master plan found you in '97, many years ago, and here we are, right? And so I'm just looking at this from an aspect of, what people the stigmatism. Okay, so firstly, some of these plants, including San Pedro, been used in ancient indigenous cultures, traditions, thousands and thousands of years. They are powerful, they're beautiful, but they can be misused. We've talked about the safety aspect of it, the ceremonial aspect of it, making sure that you have a shaman, a medicine carrier, or a ceremony facilitator that is integral and knows about these things. We've talked about contraindications to certain medicines, or I should say drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, and making sure that it's done the right way, and on all these things, right? We covered a lot of important conversational topics today, but I really want to talk about the kind of stigma around it, because you take something that's been passed down for thousands of years, that's natural, grows out of the ground. From my experiences, ingesting it, it just connects me to who I am, which is love, to everything and everyone, everywhere. And so it just opens me up to me, is the short way I can explain it. But then again, you have people around the world saying that this is, it's not something to do, and it's not safe, or you have certain governments around the world saying this is illegal. 200 years ago, women couldn't vote. 200 something years ago, we had slaves in houses, and that was okay. Slavery was okay. 100 something years ago, women couldn't vote. So we know that some of the things that may be true today, that we believe to be true today, may not be so true in the future. Let's keep an open mind. And we're not giving any advice here. We're having an open conversation. But I must say, Bei, from my experience, devoting my life to personal development, teaching personal development, spiritual healing, physical healing, I've got I've got a unique position to speak about this. And what I found was that when done right, with the right people, in the right way, a ceremony with a master plant, such as San Pedro, could, in certain instances, allow me to heal in one ceremony something that I might have been working on for 10 years, or something that I didn't even know that I needed to work on, that I clearly needed to work on. So there is this transcendental experience that often takes place. The energy that we feel in the space, the spirits, the healing, the quantum effects that we have beyond the physical, and so on and so forth. I'd like your 2 cents worth on that. What happens in plant ceremony when we open up portals, we speak to spirits, we pray to the directions and the elements and the master plans? Something very powerful takes over. What are your 2 cents worth on the transcendental quantum side of things of master plant type ceremonies?
I just want to mention what you're saying about the stigma there as well. So, one of the things with collective stigma is a lot of it comes from latent Christian religious values. And so that you're saying when you have this plant, if you feel connected to love, then why do you need to go to church? And so if you have a large population who are actually feeling this amazing connection, then it's a tricky thing for a lot of the religions, because 500 years ago, if you were going to a church and there's the symbols in the church of like, this is someone having, we took the stories about other people having these connections. And so there's an element there around that a lot of, and especially this happened with the Spanish Inquisition going into Mexico and things like that in South America, and actually stopping people have peyote in San Pedro because they didn't want people to have this connection. And so now, hundreds of years down the track, there's still a latent religious stigma around you having this access, and people hold that, Yeah. But yeah, in the ceremony, man, like there's these amazing connections, and these people move through time and space. We had a ceremony once where many people had an experience with their dad. A woman over to my left in the morning, she said, "Oh, my My dad's actually really sick and he's in hospital in South America. I spent hours in the ceremony sitting. I've got goosebumps right now. I spent hours. I was at the hospital sitting next to him holding his hand, but I'm here in the ceremony, and that ceremony was in the TV now with San Pedro, and the fire, having a fire like that is almost like a portal where people can, the fire is like a, quantum portal. So people are going through time and space and having these experiences, but then you get something collective. And so we're talking in the morning, all of these different women had direct experiences with their dads that night where they are talking about stuff they needed to talk about. It doesn't matter if he's deceased or not. It doesn't matter. And they're moving through stuff, having conversations, apologizing, and just kind of coming into an atonement with stuff. That's just one example of what goes on. However, there's things like singing together as well. At the moment, my wife and I have been learning a lot of Tibetan mantras. And we more have a bit of an Eastern style with our ceremonies than Eastern, Tibet and China and Japan, places like that. And so we're singing Tibetan mantras in ceremonies with the South American Cactus. And when you sing a mantra, not only do millions of people know it and practice it every day, it's also millions of people have known it and practiced it every day in the past. Millions of people will know it and practice it in the future. That means that a mantra like that, you're actually connecting, when you sing it properly, you're opening up a morphogenetic field of that mantra to all of these different people. And you're coming into communion with all these different people now, in the past and in the future. And you feel them feeling you. And you almost have I don't have a better way of describing it than religious ecstasy, where you are singing and you feel connected to all of these people, all of this level of consciousness. And it's like we're celebrating creation. If you actually look at the translation of some of these mantras, it's the beauty of creation and the fact that we get to be here, the fact that we can sing. And so you also have these effects. Every song or mantra has, some people will say, has a morphogenetic field which you can enter. Another really good example of this sort of, you talk about portals, we really like to use flowers in ceremonies. And so if you are looking at, the example I really like is the Chinese pink lotus. And you see that in a lot of Tibetan artwork. There's a Buddha or one of the other deities are holding a lotus. A lot of people, so if you're European, another really good example could be something like a peach blossom. And you're looking at a new peach blossom that could be in a vase. And you're like, wow, like that's just so beautiful, and the smell and the way it looks, and it's just the start of spring, and you have this feeling. There's actually a portal which links you to every other person who's felt the same way now, in the past, and in the future, who's felt the same way about that plant, and you're coming into communion with all those people. And so it's these beautiful things that take place in ceremony, and San Pedro is amazing for explaining how this works to any type of belief system, And so a scientific materialist wouldn't believe in anything I just said, And so what's cool about these sorts of disbelief systems attending a ceremony is San Pedro is going to gently nudge them and go, hey, maybe there's more to this reality than you think, And so it's like Michael Pollan talks about this idea of closing the case on reality. It's like once, especially men, they get to a certain age, like, I understand how everything works. There's no more mysteries to life. And then this person attends a ceremony and goes, we have people like this show up, and they go, wow, okay, there's more to this. There's more to this. There's more to this life, and there's a lot of mystery out there. And the beautiful thing about the mystery is getting to the point where we're not trying to understand it. We're just loving it. And that's the whole point of building a cathedral or leaving a flower blessing out in the morning, is we're having a relationship with the mystery. We're not trying to conquer the mystery like man conquering space. We're trying to just love it. There's a whole lot out there. There's a whole lot out there we don't understand, and loving the fact that we don't understand it is counterintuitive to our masculine kind of goal-oriented scientific materialist approach. And it's awesome. And that's why we love going to Bali. Because there's shrines everywhere. Every 10 meters there's a shrine, and all these people in relationship to the mystery. And so we're in that field of like, this is amazing. Yeah. So, yeah, bro.
I love that, Bei. Thank you. That's made me smile. What a beautiful thing to talk about, and what a potential in the field for those watching and listening to return to, hey, is this something I want to learn more about? Absolutely awesome. Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before I go to the final question, which I'm excited to ask in a moment, Bei, I want to just talk about a couple of links that you guys can go and learn more. So, pen and paper if you want to explore this further. It's Attunement Therapy in one word, attunementtherapy.com. It's Attunement Therapy, all in one word, on Facebook. And on Instagram, it's An Opportunity to Heal, An Opportunity to Heal, all in one word. That's where you can learn more about Bei's work, about Attunement Therapy, and about also, some of the amazing work that's coming out soon in terms of the book, and maybe even more about these medicines, who knows. Okay, so I want to ask you, bro, straight off the cuff, you ready? Last question, here we go. I want you now to imagine, Bei, that you are on the world's stage. Every sentient being alive has gathered, watching, listening, tuning in to your message to the world. When you're ready, take a breath and do share, Bei. What is your message to the world right now?
Grow a garden, plant flowers, sing songs, get a beehive. That's it, man. Yeah, keep it simple. Yeah.
Chop wood, carry water. If you want to be enlightened, do the basic things.
Yeah, you can also chop some wood. Yeah, you got to get some exercise. Yeah.
But I love that. So much of society has lost itself within corporate this and that and this. And really keeping it sacred, bringing back that connection to the earth and to the plants, I think is fundamental. Thank you so much for your time. Any final words you want to share with our listeners and viewers before we wrap up?
Yeah, just talk about this stuff. If there's something in your life, like if you're interested in San Pedro or magic mushrooms or ayahuasca or anything like this, talk about it, and talk about it to people who probably wouldn't expect a conversation like that, especially if you had an experience with it. Maybe talk about it to your grandparents, talk about it to your kids. And so the real message here is to normalize these conversations. And so we can really start to eliminate these taboos. And these taboos, the fact that they're being held in place, these stigmas around these things are actually holding so many people back from these healing opportunities. And just beginning to normalize the conversation, because, when I was a teenager, we're sneaking around cooking San Pedro and getting rid of all the evidence, or sneaking around picking mushrooms and there's a fear element because of the stigmas and taboos. Whereas if this sort of thing was talked about by people who knew about it, then there wouldn't be all this sneaking around. And so as parents, I can actually start to normalize these conversations about, because there is a psychedelic renaissance happening, and there is children in our society. How are we going to talk about it? And so it's starting to kind of take these steps to increasing the opportunity to heal, but also increasing just safety and knowledge. Because kids learn about this in the States, First Nations kids, Native American kids, they learn about peyote, they learn about ceremonies, everything like that. It's very normal. A lot of these kids grow up going to ceremonies in South America as well. It's normalized. So there's no these are medicines, these are sacraments, these are sacred. And so increasing conversation. Yeah.
I love that quote. Bei Tretiakov, there is a psychedelic renaissance coming. Indeed. See where your role goes with that, listeners, viewers, people that have tuned in. Thank you for your time, privilege and a pleasure, an opportunity to heal. Website and tune in with Bei and ask some questions. Brother, it's an honor and a privilege to have cried with you, laughed with you, sang with you, prayed with you, and to have known you for so many years now. Thank you for everything that you brought into my life. Thank you for your wisdom, for your teaching. Thank you for your devotion and dedication to this science and to this work, and to bringing the knowledge and wisdom of ancient traditions, healing traditions, sacred, beautiful traditions from around the world to people today to help us bring back the sacredness of ceremony in our life. I love you and I thank you, and it's so great to be with you again, mate.
Awesome. Love you too, bro. Awesome. Great to connect with you.